Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfic. This will be the continuation of Little Acts of Kindness. This will be Part 8, Chapter 8, entitled, Mostly Bored at Home. Izuku grimaced, trying to cook breakfast while hobbling around on crutches. It took a painstakingly long time, but eventually he managed to cook breakfast. He placed the food down on the table and put a couple pills next to his mother's spot. The medicine was supposed to be helping her get better, and Izuku supposed it was working. She could answer and ask questions now, at least, instead of being completely unresponsive. He made his way to her room, shaking her awake and dragging her to the dining room. Unfortunately, he still didn't feel like talking, his words drying up and getting caught in his throat when he tried to speak. So he resorted to silently leading her to the table. At least she could eat without further prompting once she saw the food. After he finished eating, he led his mom to the living room and put on the TV, putting on the station she used to watch before the accident. It wasn't like she was in the right mind to tell him what she wanted to watch, especially right now when he couldn't ask her. He returned to the dining room and started cleaning up the dishes. Then he went to his room and opened his notebooks, editing a few of the student pages he had written. Eventually, his thoughts drifted to Aizawa-sensei and Mike-sensei. The homeroom teacher was different from any other teacher he had before. He treated everyone in class fairly, equally, though he was a bit harsher on those he claimed were close to zero potential, such a case being Mineta. Then there was Mike-sensei, who didn't call on him in class, kept his distance outside of class without making sure it was okay with him, and in class had Ida pass out papers so he wouldn't intrude on Izuku's comfort zone. He had thought that maybe Mike-sensei didn't like him, but Aizawa had said, "He does like you, but we're pro-heroes. He can tell that his presence upsets you, so he's keeping his distance." How Aizawa had told him that they cared, and Izuku supposed that he should have expected Yue to be different. After all, he had a quirk now. He wasn't worthless. That was another thing that he had almost forgotten about. Apparently he had some undetermined quirk. He had no idea what it actually was, and hadn't had a chance to talk with Recovery Girl about it, or even inform All Might. Recovery Girl did tell him that she had done the scan at Aizawa's insistence, that the teacher had been trying to figure out why his file originally said quirkless when it should have just been undetermined. Was wondering why they hadn't paid to hire a testing specialist who could help them find out what the quirk was, what hidden requirements it had. Still, he didn't know what his real quirk could have been. Izuku pulled out his phone and fiddled for a moment, then typed up a message. "Recovery Girl did a scan of my foot. Apparently I don't actually have the double pinky joint that I was told I had." All Might didn't respond immediately. In fact, it was almost an hour later when Izuku did finally get a response to his text. "Really? That's good news then, right?" "I guess. I don't know what my actual quirk would be, though." "Once you get a handle on One For All, then we should see about finding out your original quirk. If it hasn't activated yet, I suppose we don't have to worry about it activating for now, but you should be careful. One For All makes original quirks more powerful, enhancing their natural ability." "All right. See you Monday." "See you then, young Midoriya." Izuku deleted the messages, getting rid of the mentions of One For All. He frowned. He knew it was better to focus on One For All, so he wouldn't break his bones, but he still wanted to know what his quirk was. Izuku closed his eyes. He needed to focus on One For All. After all, if he hurt himself again, Recovery Girl said he could permanently lose use of his limbs. But how could he use it without breaking his bones? Aizawa said he would set up a meeting with Hound Dog, but All Might said he would find someone else, maybe someone who had helped him before. Izuku sighed. He was bored. He couldn't wait for the weekend to be over. The day passed in a crawl, his only company his thoughts. Shota growled as he finally listened to the recording of Hizashi's conversation with Mrs. Bakugo, and how everything went down. It was frustrating that Midoriya had to deal with such people who didn't think about how their words and actions could make a situation worse. Yet he was also annoyed at All Might. The man had lied to Hizashi when his husband had asked the man if he knew what was wrong with Midoriya. After all, they had overheard the conversation the Symbol of Peace had with their student. If it hadn't been blaringly obvious before that All Might was an idiot, it was driven home when the man had said he would be looking into someone other than Hound Dog. Why would All Might not want a certified pro who was also easily available to help Midoriya? But the real kicker was when they heard All Might ask for Midoriya's permission to ruffle his hair, which meant the man at least knew that Midoriya hated being touched, but All Might didn't tell them that. They, as teachers, should have been made aware, even without them asking. But they had asked, and All Might hadn't told them. Shota huffed as he stopped his pacing and sat down, glaring at the TV. He couldn't even grade the papers right now with his arms out of commission, nor could he go patrolling or follow up on the other lead on Doi Nashi. It was frustrating, and he ended up getting back up and starting to pace around again. Izashi shook his head. You think you would be happy not having to grade? Normally, yes, but not when it's the only thing keeping me distracted from Midoriya's situation. Izashi sighed. We're doing all we can at the moment. Just relax, Sho. Get yourself plenty of rest, then you can heal up faster. Shota sighed. Why did the time seem to be dragging on and on? Izuku wrote a note and handed it to his mom with breakfast, informing her that he was going to Dagoba Beach for a little bit. She didn't give any sign after she read it, but he didn't expect her to. He probably could leave, and she wouldn't even notice. But it put his mind at ease to inform her. Izuku grabbed his backpack, which had a bento and one of his journals in it. He exited the house and carefully made his way down the stairs. Once he was down, he slowly made his way to the beach, seeing All Might standing in his true form. Young Midoriya, his mentor called. Izuku shifted his crutch to be underneath his other arm, and he raised a hand waving back. All Might closed the distance between the two of them. Once the man had got within a few feet, Izuku gave a sheepish look and pointed at his throat. You injured your vocal cords again? He nodded and All Might sighed. You really need to take better care of yourself, my boy. Anyways, I asked you here because I got in contact with someone who can help you master One for All. Izuku looked up, tilting his head. He's waiting for us at a nearby warehouse he rented for the day. The two made their way to the warehouse, and Izuku entered after All Might. Finally, an older male voice grouched. What took you so long? Sorry, Torino-sensei, All Might apologized. So, where is this successor of yours? All Might stepped to the side, revealing him. I'm afraid that besides the obvious injuries, young Midoriya has also hurt his vocal cords and can't speak right now, but Grand Torino meet Izuku Midoriya. Midoriya, Grand Torino, All Might said, introducing the two of them. The man was short and wore a white and yellow hero outfit. You don't look like much, boy, but Toshinori here did tell me what all you've accomplished so far. So, you have trouble regulating One for All? Izuku nodded. All right. Is there any amount of One for All you can safely bring out without breaking your bones? Izuku shook his head. This'll be a bit slower, but write down what you know about One for All, how you use it, what you feel and think about. Izuku grabbed the papers and pencil from Gran Torino. Then he started to write, and write, and write. Izuku had a ton of thoughts and speculations on One for All. Gran Torino blinked as Izuku turned the page. All Might chuckled. Young Midoriya loves analyzing things, so this might be a while. A half hour and a few pages later, he was finished writing most of his thoughts on One for All, and included how he used it and what he felt. He handed the papers over to Gran Torino, who read over them. Well, I see the problem, kid. You were thinking One for All is more special than it is. It's just a quirk, kid. Izuku blinked, frowning a bit. He reached into his backpack and pulled out his journal, opening up to a random page, Kamui Woods. He showed it to Gran Torino. The man read over the pages, his eyebrows shooting up. So that's just how you see quirks, then, huh, kid? Izuku nodded. Well, even if you think about it like that, One for All is just a stockpile quirk. It has power from previous wielders that can be distributed to parts of the body. But, as you know, channeling too much of the power to one limb shatters your bones. You need to learn how to control that power, to not send out so much. He knew that. He just didn't know how. That whole egg in the microwave metaphor wasn't really working out. The old man sighed. When you use One for All, you said you sent it to parts of the body where you needed it. Have you tried distributing it throughout your body? Izuku's mouth fell open, and now he felt dumb. If it really was that simple, he could channel an amount he would normally send to his arm and then distribute that amount to his whole body, lessening the amount in total to less than the 100%. Still, if he were to do that, he would have to be careful. But he couldn't test it now. He would have to wait until he was healed. Izuku didn't even know if he would be healed in time to take part in the sports festival. The UA Sports Festival is coming up. I better not see you breaking any bones, and you're interning with me during internships. Izuku's eyebrows scrunched together, and he tilted his head. He thought back to what Aizawa-sensei had said and realized that the man had hinted at the internships, speaking how important the sports festival was. Ah, your teacher hasn't told you about the internships yet, have they? Izuku shook his head. Bunch of pros look at kids during the festival and offer internships if a kid makes a good showing. Those who don't make a good showing have to pick from a list of places that are open to everyone. You won't have to worry about it since you're going to be interning with me. Well, we can't get much training done since you're healing, so I'll see you again after the sports festival. With that, the old man walked out of the warehouse. Well, that went better than I expected, All Might muttered. Izuku tilted his head. I didn't think my old teacher would be so straightforward. Usually he just likes sparring until I figure out an answer, but I suppose that option wasn't available with you being injured. Well, perhaps it wasn't so bad he was injured then, if it meant he wasn't being beat up by an old man that had All Might trembling. He pulled out his bento, eating a lunch with All Might, and then his mentor walked him back to his apartment. Take care, young Midoriya, All Might said, giving a nod as Izuku entered his apartment. He gave a thumbs up and a smile. Now, Izuku had the rest of Sunday to pass in boredom. He sighed and started thinking about One for All and how he could redistribute a portion of it throughout his body, without hopefully breaking every bone in his body. Izuku really wanted to try again, but he knew he couldn't. Not until he was healed. At least the weekend had been somewhat productive. All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 8 of Little Acts of Kindness. Chapter 9 will be next. I hope you all are still enjoying, and as always, thank you so much for listening.